by which faculty senates can express displeasure with the administration. The no confidence vote, which to many signals a desire for a change in leadership, is arguably the strongest rebuke of a university administrator that a faculty senate can approve. It's been called the nuclear option in the pages of the AAUP's quarterly magazine, Academe. The issue that brings us here today touches on several of this institution's values. These include academic freedom, faculty governance and autonomy, community engagement, as well as our land-grant mission, research and discovery, teaching and learning, and outreach and public service. The issue also touches on key questions of who has the authority to do what at this institution. For these reasons, the issues fall squarely within the purview of the Faculty Senate. In setting today's agenda, which the FCC approved, I had one primary aim, and that was to have an informed and engaging discussion. As it should, the agenda gives the first word to the senators who called this meeting. I thought it was important for this body to also hear from President Ettinger and Provost Croson, so I invited both to provide remarks and take questions. Today's agenda gives the final word to the voting members of the body. In closing, let me remind all voting members, including alternates, that the University Senate Constitution stipulates that we, quote, represent the university as a whole and not the individual campuses, institutes, colleges, schools, or departments of the university, end quote. One thing I hope we can all agree on is that a vote of no confidence should not be taken lightly. So I encourage all senators to listen carefully and objectively, to think deeply and critically about what you hear, and ultimately to vote your conscience. That concludes my remarks as FCC chair.
Thank you, Mark. Item 3 is presentation of the motion from the contingent of senators who called this meeting. Professor Gallopay, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Professor Shah, and thank you, Mark. First of all, I want to thank all of you for taking valuable time out from your summer to be here. This is a very difficult conversation. I spoke with the president yesterday. We both agreed that this is an extraordinary historical moment that is putting us and our institutions to serious tests. I approach this conversation with gravity and also compassion for how challenging the current environment has become. And the motion I'm presenting today to the Faculty Senate on behalf of 21 of my faculty colleagues is a response to the unprecedented decision taken by Interim President Ettinger and Provost Croson to intervene in a college's hiring process and rescind an offer to Professor Roz Siegel as faculty director of the Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. I come to you both as a faculty senator, as the vice chair of the CLA Assembly, and as a professor who studies and teaches complex and controversial topics. I'm also someone married to a Jewish partner who celebrates Jewish holidays with our family and who has struggled to navigate the complexities of Israel-Palestine since October 7th. For 10 years, I also must say I have loved teaching at the University of Minnesota. I believe strongly in its transformative mission of education for the young people of our state. And it's for this reason that I am gravely concerned about the precedent this decision sets for our institution's future. As some of you may know, CLA held one of its largest assembly meetings in many years last Thursday to discuss the rescinded offer to Professor Siegel. We had nearly 180 attendees. It was a challenging and open conversation. A motion emerged from the floor to take a vote of no confidence against the president and the provost for their unprecedented interventions into the college's decision to hire Professor Siegel as center director. The motion passed among its voting members by a margin of 24-6. What does such a vote of no confidence mean? A vote of no confidence is a dissent against the president's decision to circumvent the university's hiring processes, disregard the academic freedom of the faculty, the center, and Professor Siegel, and endanger the spirit of free inquiry in our classrooms. No individual at the university, whether student, staff, or faculty, should feel as though they can be punished for expressing their views. The director's search was run in a sound, rigorous, and consultative manner, with an international recruitment effort and extensive community publicity and opportunities for community involvement in the search. The search committee included faculty experts in Holocaust studies, genocide studies, and Jewish studies, and engaged in considerable dialogue with the center's advisory board. In fact, 6 of 7 members of the search committee also serve as advisory board members. Job talks from 5 selected finalists were announced via the center's newsletter to an email listserv of 5,195 people, consisting of 3,627 community members with non-UMN email addresses. All community members who attended the 5 public talks were invited to give feedback to the search committee on the 5 finalists. The search committee judged Professor Siegel to be an excellent scholar and a future director, particularly with respect to his strong vision for the center. On the basis of the search committee's enthusiastic feedback, Dean Waltner made the final decision to offer the directorship to Professor Siegel. This is a routine approach to external director hiring, fully compliant with CLA's constitution, particularly in instances of an administrative faculty position. In the space of just a few days, the president unilaterally overturned the decision in response to coordinated pressure from outside groups who opposed the hire because they disagreed with Siegel's position on Israel's military operations in Gaza, and drew the conclusion that someone with such a perspective could not serve as an inclusive director. President Ettinger himself has described this decision to the press as, quote, unusual. And yesterday's chief of staff acknowledged that it is, quote, unprecedented. Indeed, from an institutional perspective, it is an extraordinary move. Board of Regents policy is explicit that the president plays no role in the hiring of faculty. When a president is about to take an action that he considers unusual and unprecedented, they should be both cautious and consultative. In this instance, President Ettinger was neither. The president worked with Provost Croson to arrive at his decision. We also know he received pressure from advocacy groups, legislators, and donors. But while making his decision, he did not consult with Dean Ann Waltner, FCC Chair Mark B., members of the FCC, Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee Chair Eric Van Wyk, Vice Provost of Faculty and Academic Affairs Beth Lewis, Search Chair Evelyn David Heiser, Department Chair Sarah Chambers, which would have been the tenure home for Professor Siegel in history, and any members of the search committee or any members of the 12 members of the advisory board for the center. The president's sole rationale in his public statements was community consultation. But the problem here was not lack of community consultation or engagement. It was a disagreement a group of community members had with Professor Siegel's position on genocide. Here it must be emphasized how varied the communities for the center are. While the center supports research on Holocaust studies and maintains relationships with complex and varied groups of Jewish Minnesotans, the center also has supported research and outreach on the Armenian genocide, genocide in Rwanda, and genocide against indigenous peoples. The president's decision puts the center and its faculty in an impossible predicament. In rescinding an active job offer due to his statements related to his scholarly views as an expert in his field, not only has the president violated Professor Siegel's academic freedom, he has also imposed, in response to outside pressure, a de facto ideological test for the center's future. This is an equally egregious violation of academic freedom and makes the very mission of a research center devoted to topics as sensitive and complex as the Holocaust, genocide, and mass violence simply unthinkable. This is not and has never been a decision for a president to make. It should be up to faculty, experts, and colleges, not advocacy groups or legislators in dialogues with the president, to decide how to navigate the complexities of community involvement, including whether or not and how to pursue it. The president and provost have proposed to separate the faculty position from the director position, to claim that only faculty positions are covered by academic freedom. But this move to commandeer a research directorship from faculty experts has no basis in Board of Regents policy. No exceptions to policies on academic freedom are made for directorships of research centers. Board of Regents policy on academic freedom and responsibility explicitly covers all academic activity at the university, regardless of who carries it out. And this is affirmed again by the Academic Freedom and Tenure statement that was released on Monday. To offer Professor Siegel an alternative faculty position with no involvement in the research center in no way relieves the administration from its flagrant violations of academic freedom. Indeed, it would be effectively cementing a discriminatory test for the center's directorship, one that creates a chilling precedent on the topic of genocide for any future applicants to the position. I want to close by handing the mic to 40 expert voices in the field of Holocaust and genocide studies, many of whom direct similar centers of their own. They speak very highly of Professor Siegel's expertise and express great alarm at the president's decision. And I quote, "We are very concerned about the dangerous precedent that your decision is setting. It creates a chilling effect aimed at suppressing the views of a prominent scholar that are based on evidence and his expertise, and that some people reject solely on political grounds. While not all signatories agree with Professor Siegel's argument about genocide and Israel's attack on Gaza, we strongly oppose the violation of the hiring process as a response to political pressures," end quote. Any punishment of a student, staff, or faculty member for respectfully expressing their views violates the university's mission and endangers its core values of free inquiry. To some who disagree with Professor Siegel's views on genocide, this intervention may seem like a relief. But academic freedom asks that we look to the future, to the precedent it sets. If this decision stands without faculty response, those who disagree with a faculty member's expert perspective on any matter deemed controversial, from reproductive health to racism and bigotry to climate science, could be subject to rescinded offers in response to pressures outside the university. Academic freedom is not particularly relevant when matters are uncontroversial. It matters most when our discoveries and analyses are challenging, uncomfortable, and difficult. A motion to take a vote of no confidence is not one we take lightly. It has no binding effect. It is only a strong voice of dissent based on the democratic voice of faculty. Unresponded to, this course of events is a disastrous precedent for the integrity of our academic mission. Our agency as faculty is at stake. If we don't express our dissent, what happened this year can happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next is remarks from President, Interim President Ettinger. The floor is yours.
Thank you to all the faculty here today. I want to start by saying how much I've appreciated being part of Faculty Senate and meetings this year and participating in the shared governance process. And I lament that as here we are at the very end, we are dealing with this kind of a conflict. And I can just assure you that I didn't go out of my way to create one. The context for the decision I made included the following. I mean, first of all, there's just no question but that the Middle East has been the issue of the year, not only on our campus, but on campuses nationwide. There's been Department of Education investigations, including ones into the University of Minnesota. There have been congressional hearings that have cost presidents their jobs. I was just at the Minnesota Senate yesterday, being asked to testify at a hearing to learn about a pattern of anti-Israel and anti-Jewish incidents at the U of M and the administration's handling of these incidents. Secondly, this search, notwithstanding this incredibly heightened atmosphere on this topic, proceeded without a community member on the committee. The center has had long and deep connections within much of the Twin Cities Jewish community, and a community member was on the search committee last time. I do agree that the committee provided opportunity to elicit feedback and felt it would indeed elicit views from the thousands of emails that Dr. Galope referenced. Instead, the announcement elicited a large and immediate outpouring of objection as soon as it was learned of the choice, not only to the choice, but also of not being included. And this is not just the members of the advisory board who resigned as in reaction to the decision, but others internal to the university. Externally, we heard from members of the local Jewish community, university alumni, yes, elected officials. One in particular would be the rabbinical leaders of the Twin Cities, who afterwards have wrote a letter, 29 of them signing. We are writing today, days after the decision, to try to offer our input on the ongoing search. While we deeply respect the principle of academic freedom in faculty decisions, we believe that the unique nature of this position necessitates a broader, more inclusive approach. So I don't know whether the rabbis just missed the emails, whether they did provide input and it was ignored, or they didn't have the opportunity to have the input. But it does seem like that would be a fairly important community to have at least elicited opinions from. Ultimately, I tried to look at the totality of the circumstances and make the decision that I thought was in the best interest of the university. And that decision was to rescind the initial offer and pause the search. The pause was designed to allow me to listen to the community, but also to meet with the provost, the dean, the chair of the search committee, and the chair of the history department, and hear their perspectives as well. Now, in fairness to the candidate, I also felt it was important to let him know right away where he stood. Technically, due to the way the offer was structured, I had to withdraw both the offer of the director position and the faculty professorship since they were intertwined. On Friday, June 14th, at the Board of Regents meeting, I announced my decision to delay the search for a new center director. A key aspect of this decision was differentiating between the directorship and the faculty appointment. The director holds a community-facing leadership role. It has typically involved extensive conversations and involvement with the broader community, especially the Jewish community, though certainly not limited to that. And indeed, the likely disengagement from the center of a significant portion of this community could have significantly endangered its mission going forward. I also confirmed at the board meeting that decisions over offers to join the faculty to teach and conduct research in this field, as with all faculty positions in any field, are rightly made by the faculty themselves, and that I would fully honor the faculty's judgment as to the scholarly qualifications appropriate for that role. Director leadership positions are akin to deans, provosts, and chancellors, where regents confirm the administrative aspect of a position and the faculty confirms the academic side. Indeed, the faculty tenure policy states that the administrative titles are distinct and severable, emphasizing that administrative roles are separate from a faculty appointment. As I said at the hearing yesterday, the Middle East conflict has thrust our team into numerous contentious decisions. We may not have gotten them all right, but we tackled each challenge in a manner befitting of the seriousness of these issues. In conclusion, I understand that many members of the faculty do not agree with this decision. Dr. Gallopay, with whom I met yesterday, eloquently explained the concerns over how this decision could harm academic freedom, both to me yesterday and in his remarks here this morning as well. And indeed, the Star Tribune in its editorial on Monday opined that the recent decision by the administration to pause the hiring process for the director of the center was correct, but not without cost. I can assure you that it was not intended as an effort to undermine. My job, even in its very last week, is to do what I believe is best for the University of Minnesota system as a whole, taking into account all of our many stakeholders. And I can understand that reasonable people can disagree on what's best. With the indulgence of the committee, if I could just take one more minute, I've been speaking to you why I made the decision I did as the president. I'd just like to have a chance to talk with you briefly as a person. I applied for this position of interim president a year ago in April with the goal of trying to be of service to the university and to the state as a whole. I hope I was during the 13 months I've been in the position, but that's obviously up to each of you to decide what your thought is on that. What I can guarantee you is I've worked very hard in this role. It's 60 to 70 hour weeks. I've been separated from my wife for a year, basically. And so to, at the end, get a vote of no confidence, I'm just going to confess, would make me sad. To me, it's like I participated in a course for a year. I did all my work. I was a participant in discussions. I got good feedback. And at the end, I get an F from teachers, all of you who I really like. And so I just ask, is this the only arrow in the quiver? Is a vote of no confidence the only way to express the importance of academic freedom to your opinions in this topic? I do want to make one thing clear. I am not asking for you to give me a pass and then proceed with a vote of no confidence on Provost Rachel Croson. This was my decision, and so if someone needs to receive a no confidence vote, it would need to be me. I intend to be a guest lecturer at the Carlson School next year. So I'll be around campus. However this turns out, I will respect the process. And when I see any of you on campus, I'll be happy to see you and will be eager to learn what's going on at the university that I've had the privilege of sharing with you for the past year. So thank you for letting me express these thoughts, and I am now open for questions.
Thank you, President Ettinger. Item 5 is questions to the president. Please raise your hand if you have a question. I'll defer to Amber Bathke to call on people in the order that hands are raised. Thank you.
First up, we have Sumanth Gopinath.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Great. Thank you for your remarks, President Ettinger. Thanks everyone for being here. My first question in response to your remarks is, I'd like to hear more about how you understand what academic freedom is. It came up as a couple of times, but we didn't hear what you think about it, and it seems essential for us to understand. Thank you.
I mean, to me, academic freedom is the right. I mean, it's kind of, given how this year has gone with all the protests, there's an element of it being complementary to First Amendment rights that a student who is not, an academic member of the faculty still has rights to have opinions. To me, it's a heightened standard when it comes to the voices of the faculty of a university, that you have the right to have an opinion on topic and articulate that opinion and not have any retaliatory action taken on the basis of any reaction to that opinion.
All right, next we have Kat Hayes.
Thank you. President Ettinger, I wanted to ask a little bit more about your consultation process prior to your decision. My academic and applied work is in repatriation, and in that arena, I have a legal and ethical obligation to conduct widely inclusive and substantive consultations, meaning that I speak with all potential stakeholders, and all with whom I speak are satisfied that their voice and position have been heard before making a decision. This means that in the not infrequent case that not everyone gets the outcome they hoped for, they know their position was taken into consideration, and the basis for the decision is transparent. My question to you is, how did you decide before intervening who was a stakeholder in this issue and in this decision, and with whom you should speak?
Thank you for your question. I learned about the decision and almost simultaneously, obviously, reactions to the decision on a Saturday afternoon as I was washing my car in my driveway in Austin. And I've had conversations with others of you who are on the call today of, the notion of where they wish I would have had a chance to consult with this group. I mean, yeah, I kind of wish that, honestly, that the group would have had a chance and would have thought to consult with the administration in the sense of the times and in a sense of the community involvement of the directorship, to have anticipated that, hey, this is a big decision in a year like this with so many things like this going on. But time was not accorded to me to do that. I mean, we had an offer outstanding. We did not want Dr. Segal to have to act in reliance on that offer incorrectly. And so I met with a small group of people initially on the decision to whether to pause that offer so that he did not act in reliance on it. And then did meet with a few of the other folks that I mentioned during my remarks during the ensuing days before making the final decision and announcing it at the Friday board meeting.
Before we go to the next speaker, can I please remind senators to state whether they are a senator or not, and to state which college they are from. Thank you.
Next up, we have Ellen Messer-Davidow.
I am a faculty senator. I want to thank Mark B. for providing the full range of facts. The full range of facts, and in fact, most facts were not available to the Assembly last week before it voted no confidence. my understanding, President Ettinger, from reading university policy, the many other relevant documents, is that you understand that you have authority over the university and operations and authority over administrative matters, but not over faculty hiring and certain other faculty activities, and that you endeavor to uncouple the two parts of the position, the faculty from the administrator portions. So my question is, and I have heard, but I don't know if it's true, that you have met with the provost and the chair of the history department and other appropriate officials to indicate that the history department, with the usual college approval, is free to pursue an offer of a faculty-only position to Ross Siegel. Is that in fact the case?
Yes, that is correct. I did have such a meeting. I made clear at that meeting that that was well within their world to decide. I tried to reconfirm that in my public comments at the Board of Regents meeting later in the week on Friday. I've not heard whether there's interest in proceeding with that or not. I'm kind of staying out of that, but that is definitely the message I provided.
Thank you very much.
Again, a reminder, please state if you're a senator and which college you're from. Thank you. Amber.
Next, we have Kawo Abdi.
Thank you. My name is Awa Abdi. Can you hear me? Yeah. My name is Awa Abdi. I'm from Sociology CLA, and I'm an alternate for Professor Doug Hertzman. And my question follows actually and related to the last speaker. Of course, we are a university institution of higher education. We have policies and procedures, and we're all bound by those in terms of especially consequential decisions in the leadership. And when the position was rescinded, we were not told that it was both the directorship and the professorship. And there are many centers at the university. I was part of the hiring of the director of Immigration History Research Center. And usually the president does not play any role, does not interfere, does not follow. So this kind of the interference of the president and provost in this hiring, of course, makes us question what, as we move forward, is there some change in the procedures and the policies of our university? And of course, in terms of the faculty promotion and tenure, that we consider to be the provost's domain. So, what I guess gives the president the right to interfere and a faculty hire, because we at least understand that's what happened. So if you can clarify that for us, and also as we move forward, is there a change in the policy and procedures of our university in terms of directorship hires and also faculty hires? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's my intention, both in the decision and just in terms of philosophy, that the president should not be involved in the faculty aspect of the decision to hire, the decision to promote, the decision to retain, et cetera. You raise a good point about that this isn't the only center. And I guess I do want to be explicit, especially as somebody who's on my way out. That won't be my call, but I certainly can recognize that there may well be centers in this university that, to me, that would not be deemed to have the same connectivity to the community and therefore the same need to consult with the community. This is what was in front of me. I guess I have a hard time imagining in this year, given all that's gone on, that you couldn't have a more volatile and potentially controversial center than this one. And so in this case, on the administrative side of the directorship of the center, I decided to intervene. But that's a good open question in terms of, okay, well, where is that line in the future then? Is it just this one, or are there others?
All right, and next we have Andrea Stirk.
Thank you. I'm in history and CLA, and I am a senator. So let me preface my question, my brief question, by saying, as we've heard, this decision has had tremendous negative consequences for Roz Siegel, of course, and for the University of Minnesota. Besides the internal response, hundreds of scholars and scholarly societies across the country and the world, including the Middle East Studies Association, have written petitions and letters in support of Roz Siegel's scholarship and appropriateness for this position, and protesting the University of Minnesota's attack on academic freedom. In particular, scores of leading Holocaust and genocide scholars, nationally and internationally, including those who disagree with Siegel's argument, have written jointly and vigorously to defend Siegel's impressive scholarly contributions to the field and his leadership of a Holocaust and genocide program that involved considerable international collaborative work, as well as significant local public outreach with diverse constituencies in southern New Jersey and the Philadelphia area. So with that as background, now that you, President Ettinger, have a fuller picture of the search committee's very thorough work and the reasons for Dean Waltner's decision ultimately to offer the CHGS directorship to Roz Siegel.
30 seconds.
The implications to overturn the offer and the tremendous damage this has done to the university's reputation unless the decision is
Professor
overturned.
Stark, I must interrupt. Is there a question, and can you
Yes,
get
this is the question.
Thank you.
And the tremendous damage this has done to the university's reputation unless the decision is overturned. Would you consider reversing your decision and reinstating the original offer to Roz Siegel, or is it irrevocable?
Thank you for your question. No, I don't intend to reverse the decision or revisit it.
Thank you, President Ettinger. Next is Provost Croson. I invite Provost Croson to make her remarks.
Can everybody hear me? Excellent, thank you. So President Ettinger described how he was washing his car on the Saturday that we got the news. On that Saturday, I was in the Eastern Iowa airport, returning from a fest trip to the University of Iowa for one of my mentors. Her name is Betsy Hoffman. She's a famous experimental economist, and so she was one of my research mentors, but she was also an administrator, and she was one of my administrative mentors as well. Among many other jobs, including 2 provost positions, Betsy served for 4 years as the president of the University of Colorado system. She ultimately resigned from that job when one of her tenured faculty members posted something hateful comparing 9/11 victims to Nazis. The governor insisted that she fire him. She refused. He insisted, and ultimately she resigned. And so as I was having this conversation on Saturday in the afternoon, I was thinking back to my remarks in honor of Betsy on Friday evening, the night before, when I talked about Betsy's bright line. And suddenly on Saturday, I was needing to decide what my bright line was. What decisions could be made or outcomes could we face that were so unacceptable that I would resign rather than be a party to them. I decided that my bright line was the faculty position. I understood that the concerns that Dr. Siegel might face challenges in the administrative position he'd been offered, given all that had happened, and even perhaps through no fault of his own. But I felt and still feel very differently about faculty positions. Here we must rely on the expertise of the faculty themselves, and if that were in danger, I would have had a significant problem. And so when I spoke with Interim President Ettinger about his decision, I made the strongest case I could for retaining the faculty part of the offer. Thankfully, he agreed, and you've seen this in his remarks today, in his remarks to the Minnesota Senate yesterday, and his remarks to the Board of Regents on that Friday. I've worked with the Chair of History and the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts to ensure that history can make a comparable faculty-only offer without additional cost to the department, and I sincerely hope that they choose to do so. I fully understand that your bright lines might be in a different place than mine, but I did want to communicate my thought processes as you all deliberate on your decisions. And with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Provost Croson. Next are questions to the Provost. Please raise your hand if you have a question. I'll again defer to Amber Bathke to call on people in the order the hands are raised. And please don't forget to state whether you're a senator and what college you are from. Thank you. Amber?
First up, we have Ruth Shaw.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Thank you, Provost Croson, for your remarks. My question is this. In your consultation with the president about retracting the offer that CLA had extended to Roz Siegel, did you consider, I appreciate that perhaps you've commented on this to some extent, but I want to ask you explicitly, did you consider the harm to Siegel, to all those involved in choosing him for the directorship, and to the university as a whole through abrogating academic freedom? And did you raise this point to interim President Ettinger?
Thank you, Ruth, for the question. So I did and I did. Part of my duty in my role, both to the interim president and to the university as a whole, is to share my best predictions, experience, projections about the consequences of decisions. But I also, of course, understand the consequences of the decision had it gone the other way. And it's up to the president to weigh those competing consequences and make a decision that's best for the university. So I would have been derelict in my duty had I not explained to him, and I know he understood the potential downsides and upsides of each of the choices with which he was faced.
Next up is Elizabeth Boyle.
Thank you. I'm a professor in the sociology department in CLA, and I am a faculty senator. Provost Croson, my question is, I understand that this is a difficult time and a difficult situation, and so I am sympathetic. But I have to say I was very dismayed to be learning most of this information from newspapers rather than hearing directly from you. I was surprised that we didn't hear directly from you about your thoughts and your decision making here. And so can you give us some information about why you weren't communicating with faculty directly, given the unprecedented nature of this intervention by a president in a hiring decision when an offer had already been extended by a dean?
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. So as you've heard, this all happened pretty quickly, right? It kind of went from a Saturday to a Friday when the announcement was made to the Board of Regents. And we were, of course, fielding press conversations. We were fielding all kinds of other conversations. And I was meeting with the president and the dean and the chair of the hiring committee and the chair of the history department to make sure that he understood the kind of full breadth of the, both understanding the process that brought us to this place and also understanding the consequences of that decision. It's also because it's a personnel decision, a hiring decision, it's not really something that's appropriate for a blast email, I think, to all of the faculty. I did have a conversation with FCC leadership during that week as well. So, the chair of AF&T, I think, was present, or maybe not that conversation, maybe he was present with the president. And then I also met with FCC themselves and had a conversation with them. So, while I didn't find an opportunity to communicate directly with all of the faculty, and I'm not sure that would have been appropriate, there was some faculty communication during the course of that week.
Thank you.
Next up is Ellen Messer-Davidow.
Hi, I'm a faculty. Am I unmuted? Yeah, I think so. I'm a faculty senator. It's my understanding from reading the university's policy library, mission statement and guiding principles, as well as a lot of material on the center, that the university and the center have obligations to various local, national, and international communities. So I have two questions. One, Provost Croson, was there a discussion that you participated in as to whether the center under Roz Siegel's leadership could work with the community, or whether it would create turmoil and disaffection? Secondly, where is the discussion on history offering Roz Siegel a faculty-only appointment?
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. So I did not participate directly in conversations with the community, although I understand President Ettinger did, and he described some of those conversations in his and my consultations. So I can't speak to those firsthand. I'm not 100% sure where we are in the history department. I know when we met with the history chair and the search chair, they seemed amenable to offering a faculty position. Both Dean Waltner and I offered some resources so that they could provide that faculty position at a level that was to Dr. Siegel, a level that was comparable with what he was being offered before, without impacting the Department of History's budget. But I don't know what stage they are at in the process of making that offer.
Thank you.
Provost Croson, I understand you have a hard stop at 10:45. Is that still correct?
I'm afraid so. I am giving a Distinguished Alumni Award to one of our alumni in Barcelona, and I need to be on stage at 5:45, although I kind of come knock on my door. So I will get through as many questions as I can before the knock comes.
Professor Gallopy, make it quick so Provost can answer. Thank you.
I'll jump right in. Thank you, Provost Croson. So is it your view that only faculty have academic freedom at the University of Minnesota? Because it's my understanding the Board of Regents policy and the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee have held that it adheres in all academic activities. And as an employee of the university, the provost, the president, and the Board of Regents are bound to comply by the Board of Regents policy on academic freedom and responsibility. Is it your view, though, that only faculty have academic freedom protections?
It is not, and as we've discussed in our conversations around statements, my belief is that anyone engaged in academic work, including staff, including students or PhD students, all enjoy academic freedom.
And so that would include as well the operations and the programming of a research center.
I want to be careful. I'm not sure that our operational staff, our finance staff, have academic freedom, for example. And so when you say center and operations, there's a little fuzziness there.
In the capacity of director, a director who would be in charge of programming at a center, a research center like this, would that work be protected by academic freedom?
I would assume if it were academic work, it would be protected by academic freedom.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it is 10:45 and I suspect Provost Croson has to leave. Thank you, Provost Croson. I apologize to the questions that are in queue. Hopefully we'll get another chance to answer these during the debate. Thank you, Provost Croson. Item 8 is discussion and vote on the motion on the floor. Before opening the discussion, I would like to call on our Senate parliamentarian, Nancy Sims, to give an overview of how senators may offer amendments to the motion. Nancy?
Thank you. Hi, this will be for those of you who have participated in previous discussions this year. This will be the same process that we've engaged in before. If you want to amend the motion, which is in your dockets, there's a two-step process. If you offer an amendment, we have to vote first on whether to consider the amendment and then on whether to adopt the amendment. There are other motions that people can make, and those will be dealt with as they come up. I hope that's fairly clear, and I think we could proceed.
Thank you, Nancy. We will now open discussion. Also, please note that non-senators may only speak if a senator yields time to them. Each speaker will have 2 minutes, and the Senate clerk will give a 30-second warning. If you have a question or comment, please raise your hand and send a chat to Amber Bathke, indicating whether your comment is in favor of the motion, so you're pro, to against the motion, con, or other. I'll defer to Amber to call on people in the appropriate order. When you're recognized, please state whether you're or not you're a senator and which college you come from. And please direct your comments to the chair and not to each other. Thank you. Amber?
First in the queue is Christina Ewig.
Hello, thank you. I am Professor Christina Ewig from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs, serving as an alternate for Senator Brandy Blessett. As I just stated, I am a professor. I'm also a director of a center, the Center on Women, Gender, and Public Policy here at the university. In my brief remarks, I want to underline both the importance of academic freedom and contest the idea that a center director should not have the same academic freedoms as others. There are plenty of controversial issues that I work with in my center. Not everyone agrees that with the idea of equal rights for women. We just had the anniversary of the Dobbs decision that abundantly underlines contestation in that arena. Not everyone agrees that non-binary and trans children or their parents have the same rights to health care as others do. Look at legislation in Texas, look at controversy here in this state. I could go on. Not everyone agrees, and I will go on, that intersectionality, a concept that came from critical race theory, is legitimate. I work with all of these kinds of issues and in fact employ the heuristic of intersectionality on a daily basis. I also work very closely with community members. I testify to the Minnesota legislature. I work with policymakers. And I will say that as a center director and as a professor, it is more important to have academic freedom, because without such protections, I could surely never do my job. It's a fundamental value that we require in a university setting to do our work. If we live in fear that our political adversaries will silence us with threats of losing our jobs, we cannot do our jobs. And for that reason, I am in favor of this motion of no confidence and oppose the idea of splitting the position and academic freedom for one class of employees and not for another. Thank you.
Next is Sharon Jansa.
My name is Sharon Jansa. I'm a faculty senator from CBS and also a member of the FCC. I am submitting a motion to divide the question. This is not an amendment to the current motion. But as written, the resolution calls for a vote of no confidence in the leadership of interim President Ettinger and Provost Croson simultaneously. And while I acknowledge the gravity of the motion and the importance of academic freedom for scholarly pursuit, my rationale in dividing the question is to allow for separate discussion and vote concerning the role that each of these individuals played in the decision to withdraw the offer of a directorship and faculty position. And to be very clear about whether in this case we are voting no confidence in the leadership of President Ettinger, Provost Croson, both or neither. This is particularly important as interim President Ettinger's term will end in less than a week, whereas Provost Croson will continue in her position. If, as Professor B suggests, a vote of no confidence is to be interpreted as a call for new leadership, we should consider carefully which leadership decisions we are questioning. And in the interest of providing this clarity, I move that we divide the question and consider whether to vote no confidence in each of these two leaders independently.
Thank you, Sharon. I will defer to Nancy to respond to this suggestion.
Thank you. Do we have a second for Professor Jansa's motion?
I second.
All right, then this is a motion to divide the question. That's not an amendment. And this is something that we do vote on as a body. It requires a simple majority vote. I think Amber is getting things set up so that we can make a vote on this question.
Amber has initiated the poll. Please vote.
And just so you know, everybody will be able to see the poll. There's not a way to just send it to certain people, but only voting members, so senators and designated alternates should vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber, for clarification.
Seconds if you wish to vote. And it looks like everybody is done. With 70 ayes and 37 nays, the motion to divide carries.
Thank you, Amber. So the motion to divide carries. We can now proceed with the discussion. Nancy, do you have anything to add?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we will now consider the two votes separately. We will continue with the discussion. Next in line, Amber, do you want to call on people?
Next up in the queue is Matthew Bodie.
Thank you. I'm a senator from the law school, and I had some questions for the proposers of the vote based on feedback I've gotten from our faculty. Our faculty had a really sustained email discussion with representatives on both sides with strong feelings and but also very respectful, kind of like this conversation today. And I really respect both sides, the tenor. As someone who's relatively new to the university, I'm really in many ways proud that we're having this kind of discussion. So the two questions are, one, what is the role of the CLA? That's something, particularly as a new person, I'm not really familiar with. There were some folks on our faculty who thought that the CLA was not a tenure granting institution on its own, and they were also wondering about whether there was a straw poll vote or whether there was an actual vote to grant tenure, and whether if there was just a straw poll vote, whether that was a problem in terms of the original offer that was extended by the CLA. And my second question is in terms of what President Ettinger referred to as other arrows in the quiver. I was wondering if the proposer of the motion considered something other than a vote of no confidence today, and if there are any other options that were considered and why they were rejected. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I call on Professor Gallopé to see if he wants to respond to the question.
Yeah, I can only speak to a couple of those questions because I wasn't myself involved in the search. Is CLA a tenure granting institution? Was that the question? Only the Board of Regents have the power to grant tenure according to Board of Regents policy. But it's important to clarify, Board of Regents policy states that, quote, college constitutions establish the internal governance structure and embody the authority of colleges to govern their own educational administrative affairs, end quote. That's Board of Regents policy on college constitutions. It also defines colleges as academic units that are, quote, directly responsible for recruiting and hiring faculty and recommending them for promotion and tenure. So all these college constitutions are official university policy approved by the President of Board of Regents. And so colleges have academic autonomy embodied by the dean's hiring authority over faculty. Those are recommendations to the president and provost, or they're recommendations to the provost and the Board of Regents for granting tenure.
Thank you, Professor Gallopé. I think Professor Chambers, Senator Chambers can also chime in to your question. I call on Professor Chambers.
Hi, I'm Sarah Chambers. I'm chair of the history department in CLA. I am not a senator. I just want to say first that the Department of History affirms the integrity of the search committee and the process that led to the original offer to Dr. Segal. Since this was a CLA and not a history search, our faculty was consulted only in the final phase when the finalist candidates were historians. Since the dean is the appointing authority, we're told there would not be a departmental ballot on a hire, but since the dean was interested in feedback on the tenurability of candidates in our department, we conducted a straw poll on all the finalist candidates. My understanding from another search that has happened this year that only after an offer is made and accepted does the actual expedited tenure process proceed with the full array of, external letters, departmental report, et cetera, et cetera. So we never got to that phase. Those participating in the straw poll, which was a majority of our voting members, but not all our voting members, it was an informal vote, indicated strong support for Dr. Segal. After the withdrawal of the offer, faculty, including a few who had not ranked him as a first choice and a higher, objected to this deviation from normal process. The provost and dean drafted an alternative offer for a faculty-only position with benefits similar to those in the original offer. History faculty are now considering how to proceed. Given that we are in this situation because of a deviation from normal procedures, we want to move thoughtfully and according to good processes. We respect Dr. Segal's scholarship and academic freedom. It may seem a simple solution to substitute one offer with another, but in fact, it raises many issues we need to consider. And I'm thankful that the dean recognizes and respects our need for that time to deliberate, particularly over the summer when most faculty are on 9-month contracts. We are currently working to schedule a meeting that will allow the greatest number of faculty to participate in such discussions.
Thank you, Professor Chambers. Next in line, Amber.
So because we've had Pro and 2 others, the next person in line is Ellen Messer-Davidow.
Thank you. Unfortunately, this whole situation is inflected by people's views on the Middle East conflict, on lines of university authority, and so forth. My reading of the situation is that the president exercised legitimate authority, that he could make a decision about a fraught administrative hire, and that he endeavored to uncouple the faculty position over which he had no authority from the administrative position over which he had authority. And further, and this is a concern of mine, if would the finalist who was selected be able to lead the center in a way that it could accomplish the activities that it currently pursues and that are articulated in its mission statement. I think, and I may be wrong, he concluded that it would not be able to do that. So I am opposed to the no confidence vote, and I would ask my colleagues on the Senate to try to set aside their emotions, and I think we all have strong emotions in this situation,
30 seconds,
and political views, and make a fact-based decision that accords with university policy.
Thank you, Ellen. Amber?
Next in the queue is James Forrester.
Hi, folks. I'm James Forrester, an associate professor and senator in CFANS. I feel it's important for the folks outside the College of Liberal Arts to express their frustration with the process here, which is basically a dangerous precedent set by interim President Ettinger when he rescinded the job offer. The dean of CLA, given by the dean of CLA. I've served on several search committees and am familiar with how hard they work to generate a pool of good applicants and then fairly summarize the strengths and weaknesses of each candidate. I trust in this process, mostly because in my experience, you know, even when we've had differences in opinions, folks have really worked together to try to find the best candidate that will fill out the attributes of the advertised position and contribute to the university's mission. In this case, it was not a call for a history professor, but for a director of a center. By rescinding the offer, interim President Ettinger has devalued the work of the search committee and the time that the candidates put in good faith to the process. He's also set a precedent for allowing outside influence on hiring and promotion decisions when community, political, or industry groups don't get the candidate that they want. we're going to continue to confront hard topics related to public health, human rights, environmental crises, and more.
30
I
seconds.
think that the centers and institutes of the university are going to play crucial roles in identifying and addressing these topics. It seems impossible to expect the directors to hold neutral positions before they're allowed to serve. So I ask, is Professor Siegel capable of leading a public-facing center while also holding a professional opinion? Is he capable of cultivating a heart of peace in himself and others as he leads respectful debates on hard topics? Honestly, I don't know, because I didn't read his application packet. I didn't go to his seminars or talk to him in any way, but the search committee did.
Sorry, the senator's
I
time's
defer
up.
to their judgment and feel that interim president should have as well.
Thank you, Professor Forrester. Next in line, Amber.
Next in line, I don't have anyone who's asked to speak against the motion at this time. So next in line is Professor Alexander Jabari. You're muted. He's muted.
Sorry. I'm a substitute for Senator Yanjia Bian in CLA. Both President Ettinger and Provost Croson emphasized that the directorship is a community-facing position, and they implied that a director doesn't need the same level of academic freedom and protection from community pressure that a faculty role does. The director of the center needs just as much protection from community pressure as a faculty position does, if not more, and the center's own history shows this. In 2011, a different community group put pressure on the Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. This was the Turkish Coalition of America, which didn't like how the center approached the issue of the Armenian genocide. They sued the university and the director of the center specifically. The university's lawyer at the time, Mark Rottenberg, said, and I quote, "The university administration does not condone any coercion or influence peddling by a donor to an academic program to alter the academic viewpoints of the students and scholars that work in the program," end quote. And he went on to say that if the community pressure campaign was successful, it would jeopardize the ability of scholars and research centers to carry out important work that could be controversial. The study of genocide is always going to be controversial. The university in that case clearly recognized that community pressure on the director of the center amounts to an attack on academic freedom. The actions of President Ettinger and Provost Croson have seriously violated our academic freedom. We should vote no confidence in both of them. Thank you.
Next in the queue, because of the alternating pro and con, we have Diane Newmark-Sainer.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Diane Newmark-Steiner. I'm a Regents Professor in the School of Public Health. I've been a faculty member here for 30 years, and I headed up our division for nearly 9 years. I am also a member of the Jewish community, and my family has been very affected by both the Holocaust and the events and the aftermath of October 7th. I just want to say that the decision to rescind this position, I view as the correct decision. I'm going to vote against the vote of no confidence. I think it's essential for us to address academic freedom, but I think it is also essential for us to take into account the community connections, the ability of a person in this role of this center to work with our community on these highly, highly charged issues. Thank you very much.
Next is Stuart McLean.
Hello, I am a faculty member in CLA. My video doesn't seem to be working, but I am here as an alternate for Professor Sonali Pahwa of the theatre department. It seems to me that the two issues that should most concern us here are first, academic freedom, and second, the overturning of faculty governance and due process in hiring decisions. Starting with academic freedom, it has been suggested that because this is a so-called community-facing position, different criteria apply. I would suggest that that's not the case and that academic freedom applies as much here as to any faculty search. We also need to ask which communities the centre and the university are serving. It should be noted, I think, that there are many Jewish faculty and students who support Professor Siegel's appointment and agree with his criticisms of Israel. There are also many who disagree with Professor Siegel and yet support his appointment to the directorship. Clearly, events in Gaza divide opinion both on campus and in the wider world. As regards this issue, though, there can be no such thing as a unifying candidate for the directorship of the centre. A scholar taking the exact opposite view to Professor Sigal would be every bit as controversial to certain sections of the communities that the centre is supposed to serve. So the central issue here, again, is one of academic freedom. Finally, a word about administrative overreach. The procedure followed in making Professor Sigal's appointment was entirely in accordance with the protocols set out in the CLA constitution and involved extensive consultation with stakeholders. This was a legitimately arrived at hiring decision, and interim President Ettinger has no business overturning it and quite possibly no constitutional authority for doing so. His intervention has not resolved conflicts and divisions within the community the centre served. It has significantly—
Sorry, the speaker's time is up.
It has significantly exacerbated them. We've heard that President Ettinger's intervention is without precedent, and it must not be allowed to set a precedent. For that reason, I urge you to support this motion.
Perfect. Just in time, Amber.
Next up is Elisa Cohen.
Hello, I'm a CLA senator. I'm also an administrative director of the journalism school. And so and I'm a Jewish member of the community here. I've been thinking about what is kind of the teachable opportunity here, given the stakes and given the fraught conversation. And I wanted to use my time to talk a little bit about what I've learned. First, I was unaware of the CLA-wide search going on. It was not, the finalists were not announced to the CLA-wide community, although sometimes that does happen. And I do imagine, because I'm not on a listserv, that I didn't receive it. But unlike a director of the journalism school or even the music school, this wasn't well publicized. So I don't think that there was as much engagement as there could have been. There were 20 candidates for this position, and I can only surmise that typically in history or other searches, we have many more than 20 candidates. So I do think there was something about this political moment and about this search that has been an issue. But I wanted to say something about the director position and how important this role is, and why we found ourselves in this position to educate the community. In 2020, after the first draft of the proposed Minnesota K-12 academic standards for social studies were announced, they removed all references to the Holocaust and other genocides.
30 seconds.
Problem. And the JCRC worked closely with the center to convince MDE to restore benchmarks requiring the teaching of the Holocaust and other genocides. So it's not true that community partners, broadly considered the 12 partners, weren't engaged in the center's activities and shouldn't have been. And this is a very important outward-facing role. And so when we think about how that embedded in the legislation is the creating of a working group that involves the center's interim director, Joe Eggers, and JCRC's Laura
Sorry, the speaker's time is up.
Stakeholders to be involved.
Next, I will call on Jennifer Goodnow.
Thank you. And I just want to say I am the elected Morris FCC representative and vice chair. I want to thank everyone for their engagement in this topic. It is very, very important. But I wanted to share that I will be voting no on this motion for 3 reasons, all of which are independent of whether I agree with the decision to pause the search, but more have to do with the magnitude of what a no confidence vote means in my perspective. First, I have the luxury, and I think many of us do, of a 500-foot view of the university, encompassing the areas that we interact with or whom we're elected to represent. And I can critique the decision from that limited perspective. But I recognize that the president has the responsibility of an 100,000-foot view and the many, many invested constituencies, and has to make decisions with a different lens than I would maybe do. Second, I think a vote of no confidence should take into account the totality of a person's leadership. During my time as a member of the FCC, I've worked with Interim President Ettinger and Provost Croson, and I've had a chance to see both actions and words where they have defended academic freedom, and including resisting calls by the legislature to take down unit statements, and during the COVID times when there were many decisions that needed to have an academic freedom component to them. Finally, for me, I have to ask myself, do I actually have no confidence in this administration's leadership?
30 seconds.
And that is not the case for me. I actually do have confidence in the leadership of this administration moving the University of Minnesota forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next in line, Amber.
Next in line is Sumant Gopinath.
Thank you. I don't know if my video can be shown, but I'm Sumant Gopinath. I'm a substitute senator in CLA for Akosua Ado in the School of Music. I just want to emphasize that it is the gravity of the intervention made by President Ettinger with Provost Croson's support that, to my mind, makes a no confidence vote necessary. Do we want our university to work this way, in which a normal hiring process, run from all accounts that I've heard meticulously, with great expertise, is undermined at the very top after all of that? It's highly, highly troubling. And I think it is really important. I fully agree with a previous remark that was made, that this is a difficult, challenging moment that we're in, and that the decisions are heightened emotionally by the political conflicts. But it is actually the precedent that seems to me crucial. This could be applied to so many other situations, as Professor Galope described earlier. This is the crucial thing. And in terms of judging the question of no confidence, we are judging the quality of this decision, this unprecedented move that sets a terrible precedent for how this university could work.
30 seconds.
That is what, to my mind, we're evaluating. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumant. I think people can show their video themselves. They can activate it. Next in line, Amber.
Next in line is Elizabeth Boyle.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated the debate so far, and I very much agree with the last speaker that the gravity of the precedent that this would set does warrant a no confidence vote. I wanted to speak again to the question of whether the public was involved. I'll say that I received emails to attend all of the talks, even though I'm not particularly involved with the Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, but I have signed up to be on listservs for many studies or many centers that I'm not super involved in. And so the idea that we would send emails to everyone, I think you'd get a lot of negative feedback from faculty if you were sending invitations to for all job talks across the college. But I do think people were accessed. And as Professor Galliope said earlier, over 5,000 members of the public were invited to attend the job talks, and anyone who attended received an email that allowed them to provide feedback. And then I also just wanted to mention that there is no requirement to have a public member on a search committee for the Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. Just last year, I was on a search committee for the Institute for Human Rights, and we did not have a public member on that committee, even though that's a public-facing center. And others have mentioned that the Immigration History Center did not have a public member. So I do think that it is a public-facing institution, but having the public necessarily involved is not really natural under our typical procedures. And then I would also point to the fact that as others have said, any figure here is going to be polarizing because public opinions are so divided on current situations, and it is a very difficult time. Thank you.
Time is up.
Thank you, Professor Boyle. Please note there are about 14 minutes left. There are 4 hands up. We need to go through the questions very quickly because we want to give everyone a chance to voice their opinion. With this in mind, I would call Amber to call on the next person.
Next up is Colleen Flaherty, Manchester.
Thank you. Colleen Flaherty, Manchester, FCC member from the Carlson School. This is following up on some of the other comments around the question of no confidence for the totality of the leadership decisions versus kind of the severity of the single incident. I would like the parliamentarian or clerk to articulate what options does the body have to communicate disapproval besides no confidence?
Important question. Nancy, I'll call on you to respond.
So the form of this particular vote was chosen by those making the motion. We could change the form of this particular motion, vote if somebody wanted to propose an amendment to the current motion. We've already had a change to the written motion. The written motion is just the one sentence, and we've already had a change which we have already voted on, which is that we will be separating that out so that the current motion that we are considering is 2 different votes. These are technically now separate motions, but we don't need to get into that. There will be 2 different votes, one on the exact wording as written for interim President Ettinger and one on the exact wording as written for Provost Croson. If somebody wanted to suggest a change to the wording of either of those would also be options. And if you don't agree with the motion as proposed, you can also vote no. I hope that covers the question.
Yeah, can you just clarify just generally what options does a body have to express disapproval? This is related to a question I think that a senator asked to the proposers of the motion of what alternatives were considered. I just would like you to articulate what other options are there. I think Mark B mentioned censure. Like if you could just say what the options are, so then someone wanted to request an amendment, they could do that.
There is not a list of options. This is in the form that it is in because this is the form that those people making the motion chose. If somebody wanted to change it to say censure, they could change it to say censure. If somebody wanted to have, we can't consider it at this motion. If somebody wanted to propose a different motion with a different approach, and there is nothing specified in our rules about this, and Robert's rules is one of our governing documents, but it doesn't have specific procedures for this either. There are options here. There is not a bulleted list of options. I'll stop there or else I'll start sounding like a librarian in a minute.
I'll move on to the next speaker.
The next speaker is Jason Varon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My camera's apparently not working. First of all, great discussion. I want to say that separating these 2 out is a good idea. As you heard President Ettinger suggest that he is the responsible for this decision. And while I want to point out and remind everybody, including President Ettinger, that regardless of the outcome of this vote, he should not feel sad, because this is in regards to a very specific decision process. And I, for one, think his administration has done an excellent job for what the time period he's been in there. So I am going to vote to pass the resolution because myself and my other 2 colleagues at the College of Pharmacy, sorry about that, at the College of Pharmacy, polled our entire faculty, and we got 34 responses, which were 2 abstentions 17-4 supporting the resolution and 15, so it was very close. But I just want to remind everybody that it's not saying that President Ettinger is a bad person or did a terrible job. It's for this specific instance. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Varin. Shir Elon is next.
Hi, thank you. I'm from CLA, from Asian and Middle Eastern Studies, and I'm an alternate for Professor Libler. So I do want to emphasize that I think what we're voting here today, importantly, is the breach of the university hiring procedure due to political pressures and the precedent that that sets for future hires across campus. So as the last speaker said, we're not voting on the president's conduct as a whole, but we're voting no confidence on this particular incident. And I think this is the important issue here. We have to remember the precedent this sets. Still, as speaking as an Israeli and as a Jew, I want to say that I'm truly worried about the way this capitulation to external community pressures marks Segal's critique of Israel as beyond political legitimacy in a very dangerous way that will no doubt sanction the ability of the Center for Holocaust and Genocide Study to explore what is happening in Palestine in the future. And this debate is obviously of urgent public concern, is clearly part of the center's mandate, and we should all recognize that Segal's position on it is by no means unique or exceptional. So I'm very concerned that this would put debate on Palestine beyond the pale of the center's discussion. There's also been the assumption raised here in some of the comments that Segal would not be able to work with the community, but I do want to insist that we trust the process of the search committee that has considered Segal's vision for the center and in which direction he can lead the center, what kinds of community and can engage, and what kind of vision he can have for making the discussion of both Holocaust and genocides happening currently and historically relevant to the current moment. And this is also what is at stake here. What kind of work do we want this center to do in the future? So thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ellen. In the interest of time, we have 6 minutes. We will call on the last two people, Eric, I agree. And Sarah, you've taken your hand down. Did you?
Oh, I just took it down because I thought I was next in the queue. Sorry.
Okay, Sarah, you're next. And then Eric.
So I am struggling with the wording of this motion because as the last few speakers have stated, I think that Interim President Ettinger has done a wonderful job overall, but I strongly disapprove of this particular decision that was made. The statement that we're voting on is a motion of no confidence, and I'm quoting here, by the way, a motion of no confidence in the leadership of Interim President Ettinger and Provost Croson. And I know that those have been split into two, but overall in the leadership, I cannot vote no confidence, but I'm wondering if we could, so first, two things. One is that one of our very first questions posed by the man who asked whether the CLA is a tenure granting institution, he also asked what other types of censure were considered, and that question has not received a response. And so I am very interested in hearing what other types of censure were considered. If there were not others, I would propose an amendment to the motion to say a motion of no confidence in the decision of Interim President Ettinger to revoke this directorship and make it specific to this one decision.
Thank you, Professor Buchanan. Before we move on, there is a lot of chat that is coming at us. Several people have suggested to extend the debate. So propose a motion to extend debate. But according to rules, only a recognized speaker can make that motion. At this point, we have Sarah Buchanan and Eric Daigree. as the
So
rest
it's
of the
still my
speakers.
time. I think I still had a few minutes, so I move to extend the discussion to 11:45.
Perfect.
That's
Thank
very
you,
clear.
Professor
That's
Buchanan. We would have to get a second.
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 Thank you very much. Do we need a poll and a simple majority?
Committee of the whole, yeah.
Amber is pulling on the poll, and we will vote on the poll to extend the time for the debate.
Okay, and while that's being prepared, I would really like Professor Gallopy to address what other types of censure were considered, please, because that was, again, one of the very first questions asked, and it has not yet been addressed.
Thanks, Sarah. So I'll just say, I just wanted to make one clarification that the motion, I don't have the language right in front of me, but it says due to the unprecedented. So it's a motion of no confidence due to the unprecedented intervention in the university's hiring practices. So it is directly related to this action taken by the interim president and by the provost. So even though we've separated the two people out, the two individuals, the president and provost, it is linked to the action taken in the instance of Professor Voss Siegel's rescinded offer.
That is not the motion that we.
Everyone, please hold on because we will run out of time. We will not have the poll to be initiated. So everybody hold on. Amber is generating the poll. Let's first vote on extending the time for the debate, and then we can get into the debate again. Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
Okay, I'm about to launch the poll. Please remember that only senators and designated alternates should vote. Also, this vote does take a 2/3 majority to pass. Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. Last call on the vote. So we have 68 ayes and 40 nays. That does not reach the 2/3 majority to extend debate.
Since this motion did not pass and we did not have time to extend the debate, everyone in queue with questions, I'm sorry we cannot get to you. We will next move directly to the vote. Just to be clear, there are going to be two votes. The first one for motion of no confidence for President Ettinger. The second one for Provost Croson, again for the same motion of no confidence. Amber, can you please initiate the poll?
Are you still on? Or we initiate the poll. Can I ask Jeanette, could you please share the divided question slide? Okay, so I will now launch the poll for the first motion, which is the first one is the president. Okay. Okay, sorry for that delay. I'm just managing some things behind the scenes. Give 5 more seconds if anyone else wishes to vote. All right, and so with 66 ayes and 38 nays, that motion carries. I will now launch the poll for motion number 2 with regard to the provost. Five more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 55 ayes and 48 nays, that motion also carries.
Thank you, Amber. Remember that only faculty senators were supposed to vote. Please note that the vote will be verified and the confirmed result will be sent after the meeting. Moving on to the next item. Item 9 concerns a letter to Interim President Ettinger and Provost Croson from the AF&T committee and is presented for information only. With this, we conclude the topics for our meeting today. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Amber, please initiate the poll.
I guess. Then we would need a motion to abstain because we're past this.
Seconds if you wish to vote. Last call. With 94 ayes and 4 nays, this motion carries.
Thank you, everyone, for being here and for participating in this special FCC Senate meeting. I appreciate your time. And with this, we bid goodbye.